It was on January the 27th of 2025. DeepSeek AI, which is an unknown little AI company in China, set the US market nosedived. This phenomenon was called Sputnik Moment. So what is Sputnik? Sputnik is the first satellite sent into the orbit by the previous Soviet Union in 1957. And this event took the US by surprise and left it in shock because the US believed it dominated the space technology. And the Sputnik launch was a wake-up call for its national security. Imagine that if the Soviet Union was ahead in space technology, it could also be ahead in military technology. So apparently, if US falling behind in this space race, US could be in danger. To respond to the Sputnik launch, the US government poured massive investments into space technology. They created NASA in 1958. They made a bold commitment to beating the Soviet to the moon. President John F. Kennedy's famous speech made in 1961 promised, "America will land a man on the moon by the end of the decade." That's exactly what happened. In 1969, Apollo 11 landed on the moon to claim the victory in the space race. But the US government didn't stop there. They also pushed hard to improve education, especially in science, math, and engineering. The US government enacted two key acts. One in 1958, which is the National Defense Education Act, that allocated $887 million to boost the STEM education. It funded almost everything from scholarships for students who pursuing technical degrees to training teachers in science and math. This act helped produce a whole generation of scientists, engineers, and mathematicians, and they became the key players driving the technical boom in the following decades. There is another act that the US government enacted in 1965, the Higher Education Act. This act was all about making colleges more accessible. It increased the federal funding for universities and boosted financial aid for students, especially in STEM fields. So it helped more people getting the education needed for the growing science and technology fields. In the long run, this played a big role in shaping the US workforce for the space race and beyond. We can definitely say that the growth of Silicon Valley in the 60s and 70s were deeply tied to these national efforts in the US. Many companies like Apple, Intel, and HP got their start by developing technologies for space missions. These technologies were originally intended for NASA's work or the Department of Defense because they received the early contract from those government agencies. And over time, these companies adopted them for commercial use. The technologies developed during the space race became the backbone of digital revolution. They transformed daily life and led to the creation of the personal computer. By the 80s and 90s, the Silicon Valley boom made it the heart of the global technology. Nearly 70 years after the Sputnik launch, US faces another very similar technical challenge. It is the challenge from China's advancements in AI, particularly with the release of DeepSeek R1 version in January 2025 and its open source approach. People in US recalled the Sputnik moment that the US faced before. But this time, one thing is a little bit different. It took US 12 years to go from Sputnik to moon landing, while the pace of AI development moves at a lightning speed. The nowadays technical breakthroughs won't happen in years, but instead it happens in months or even in weeks. So this fierce AI international race is on, just like it was in 1957. We'll have to wait and see how the story unfolds on all sides, with even more players potentially joining the race. And remember, history repeats itself and always teaches us valuable lessons.